Thinking of your theme about changes, about new beginnings, and got to thinking about my life, and probably the most traumatic and dramatic change in my life came when I was only in the sixth grade. Well, except for marrying Peggy, which dramatically changed my life. But the the story is I think I'll title it "Change is Difficult." Change is difficult. Now, I was born in Crosbyton, Texas, which is a little bitty town in the high plains of Texas near Lubbock. And I was born in a tar paper shack behind Big Mama and Gramps' house where my mom and daddy lived because daddy didn't have no job. It was right after the war. And times was pretty hard. But I didn't know it because I was just a baby. I was happy. Life was good. I was uh, fed and cared for and loved and played with. But then I got asthma. It was pretty bad. I nearly died from all the dust and all the stuff that was out there. Big Mom and Gramps' house was on the edge of town and a big cotton field across from it and a lot of dust blowed. So a change came. My daddy called Uncle Dink and Aunt Odine down in Baytown, Texas, and Uncle Dink thought that maybe Daddy could get a job in Baytown. It was a lot bigger town. So I was bundled up with me and my brother and uh, my baby brother. By then, Mama had another baby about 9 months after me. Uh, uh, but we all piled into the little car and headed down to Baytown. And Daddy got a job with eventually with the furniture company. And I grew up poor. I didn't know I was poor. I mean, all my friends was poor, and so I just was like everybody else. And went to school down there, walking to school, which was nice. We were on the edge of town and near an oil refinery, and every time it'd stink up, my daddy would say, "Smells like money to me." Those oil millionaires, and the I ended up at Anson Jones School, junior high, they called it then. Anson Jones Junior High was a nice place to go to school. All the kids were a lot like me, and we ended up thinking that everything was going to stay the same. Everything was perfect. From the time I was able to understand what was going on, everything was the same. Uh, I didn't think things would ever change, but then they did. You see, Daddy lost his job, and Big Mama and Gramps said, "Y'all can come on back to Crosbyton." So they did the thing. They pulled me out of school. All my friends. It was a great neighborhood. We had lots of kids, lots of dogs, lots of adventures and places to go and do. And now suddenly, at that very moment when you are most vulnerable, I had reached that age of puberty. You know, it's kind of God's joke on people because I was a kid and I was round bodied and rosy cheeked and a pretty baby, Mama called me. And then all of a sudden, zits pop out. The only time when you're just wanting to look better, your complexion goes crazy and your voice starts to squeak, and it's a terrible joke on kids that at that one moment when they begin to take an interest in the other sex, uh, you suddenly become less attractive. But I was going through that crisis when all of a sudden I got pulled out of school and sent off to Crosbyton, Texas. And there I was in a town where everybody knew me, but I didn't know everybody. I was the Swindoll's grandson, and had bad hair. It was a flat top. My daddy always kept us shaved on the sides and flat top with wax, and it would get just a little bit shaggy, and they would shave the sides and flatten it out again. So there I was looking like a new recruit for the Army. And this was an age when, you know, kind of Elvis was the deal. Uh, I'd grown up in a time when it was pretty stable. Uh, the only president I ever knew was Ike. And suddenly there I was in a strange town with strange people, and some of them had ducktail, you know, these comb back pompadours, and uh, there I was with the flat top and raggedy clothes, and it was hard. It was really hard on me to kind of make friends and all, and the culture was different in Crosbyton. I was Anson Jones Elementary or Anson Jones Junior High was just a typical little school. And here in Crosbyton, all the schools were in one place. They had the school, they had the high school on one side, the junior high on the other, the elementary and the primary were all on this one block. So everybody was together, and it was all dominated by the high school football team. And it was like Friday Night Lights on steroids. Everybody was out of town for the out of town games, and everybody showed up for the home games. And I didn't know nothing about football, and the coaches had a lot of influence. So there I was, showed up in the sixth grade in midterm, and uh, PE PE came, physical education, and we all went out of the school and around to the side out to the football field. And what were we doing on the football field? Well, we were uh, playing a game. They called it crossover, and they had put one guy out there, and all the other people from the class, all the boys, would line up on the 50-yard line, and then they would all take off and try to get to the goal line. And the one guy would tackle. And once he would tackle somebody, they would get up and they would gang up on the next one and that next one. And eventually, of course, you would have somebody running and 10 guys trying to tackle him. And it was brutal. It really was pretty a brutal game. And of course, the high school football coach was out there watching every playground time, and there we were. He was evaluating all the kids on how they tackled and how they ran, because he would have them as freshmen the next year in high school. Well, I was different. I didn't know nothing, so I watched, and there was one kid called Wright Henson. He was a big, tall, handsome guy. I was short and ugly and bad teeth and bad hair, and he was everything that I wanted to be, but wasn't. And he could also run. Man, he could run good, fast, and very evasive. And I was very determined that I would make a name for myself. So I waited. I would get tackled pretty early unless I was chosen to start. And then I would always watch for Wright and I'd tackle him. Now, this went on for weeks. And Wright was very unhappy that I was able because I learned. I learned the moves and the the ability to play that particular game. I would tackle him. And finally, Wright had had enough. He really did. He told me, don't do that. And I did it again. And so on the way back to the classroom, he cornered me behind the school and he took me down, put me in a headlock, threw me on the ground, sat on my chest, reared back and hit me right in the face. Busted my lip, bloodied my nose. Now he'd be charged with assault, but it was just schoolboy stuff. So nobody cared. But I was there crying and bloody and uh, I didn't know what to do. And my a friend of mine who became a fast friend, Roy Hobbs, came up and said, "Get off him." Now, Roy Hobbs was what they called a hoodlum. He had that slick back, greasy hair and had a big family, and everybody was kind of scared of him. And even Wright knew better than to cross him. So he jumped up off of me and said, "Don't you ever do that again." Well, I went back with Roy and we had a little talk and he said, "Maybe you better stop tackling him. He's a little bigger than you are." And so I said, okay. And I did. I'd only tackled him occasionally then. And sure enough, time passed. I survived the sixth grade without any further scars or incidents. Went into high school, became a football player, a good middle linebacker, and a good center. And the funny thing is that I spent a whole lot of time blocking for Wright Henson, who was a star running back. So I helped make Wright's life a lot better, and he and I became good friends. So the lesson that I learned from that transition was that change is difficult, and sometimes it requires a little bit of blood, but eventually kids can work things out without adult interference. And that's what happened to me. Thank you. That's the first time I ever told that, and it's a little bit rough, but it's kind of an amalgam of a lot of other things that happened to me. And I'm thinking of maybe putting together a Crosbyton sort of like Lake Wobegon so that I can do. We had the village idiot, we had the town drunk, we had the sheriff, we had a whole bunch of people that are almost stereotypical of small towns. And since it's drawn from personal experience, I feel very justified in lying a little bit about such stuff.